The muffled sound of measured footsteps was heard in the long, dark tunnel. Just a few months ago, Sam could not even imagine how much the world in which he had to learn to survive would change. The many dead, bloody bodies of people killed in a brutal manner, which he saw every day, over time ceased to evoke horror and other emotions in him, which were replaced by indifference. Passing by another dead zombie, the idea that everything that was happening looked like the end of the world became increasingly stronger in Sam's head. A few minutes later, the hero found the door leading to the exit and decisively pulled the handle, opening the door, after which he stepped over the threshold without hesitation. Once outside, Sam stopped. The northern lights, which appeared for the first time several months ago, involuntarily caused delight every time. That night, as soon as it appeared, many creatures similar to werewolves from myths appeared in the city of our hero. Because of this, people had to hide in safer shelters than their homes, but not many survived. Relying on luck, Sam has managed to stay alive so far, so today he decided to try his luck, hiding from the werewolf in his makeshift shelter. Passing close to where Sam was, the monster heard a rustling sound and turned around, trying to determine the source of the sound. Realizing that the guy's careless movement had attracted the monster's attention, he began to pray that it would head in a different direction. A mouse that suddenly appeared caught his attention. He didn't understand why the mouse got so close to him. But the next moment a brilliant idea matured in his head. Apologizing to the animal, Sam threw the mouse straight towards the werewolf. She flew several meters, landing right in front of the monster, not noticing the huge shadow hanging over her. However, the loud roar of the werewolf attracted her attention. The next moment the mouse took off, trying to escape from danger. Sam breathed a sigh of relief as he saw the monsters retreating back. After waiting a few seconds, he decided to reconnoiter the situation, imitating the sound of birds. When, after a minute, no one appeared, the hero left his hiding place and headed towards the building of the nearest store. Once inside, the guy realized that he was incredibly lucky today because no one had ever visited this store before him. Taking the cart, Sam began to carefully examine the contents of the shelves. He was very happy when he found jam with a rare taste. Having put the can in the cart, the hero remembered that he needed to buy food for his pet. Once at the desired rack, he thought for quite a long time about what to take and did not notice someone else's presence. Hearing someone squeak, Sam turned around and saw a werewolf he already knew, holding a mouse he had caught. He began to slowly back away, trying not to provoke the werewolf. He suddenly threw the mouse away and also slowly began to approach the guy. At some point, the werewolf's eyes turned red and he rushed at his victim. But Sam had nowhere to retreat and he needed an urgent plan. Without thinking twice, he took off his backpack and unzipped it, intending to get something. The next moment, the hero joyfully exclaimed that he had a gift for the werewolf. The guy held in front of him a snow-white puppy who was ready to happily stand up for his owner. The monster stopped looking at Sam in bewilderment, who was expecting some kind of reaction from the werewolf. A few moments later, the werewolf's eyes turned red again, and he lunged at our hero. The next moment, Sam told Snowball to aim straight at the monster. After this, the puppy was enveloped in a white light, and powerful currents of air lifted the werewolf up, turning his body into ice. A few seconds later, his body was broken into many pieces, after which the hero and his pet headed towards the exit of the store. A few hours later, Sam returned home safely. While sorting out the things he had obtained today, the guy praised Snowball for his help and said that he would definitely receive his reward. The puppy himself did not look away from the packaged box of food that interested him. The hero noticed Snowball's interest and said that he took more delicious food for him. Taking out 2 jars of canned food, he turned to the puppy and asked what he would choose, canned food for dogs or cats. Looking at the delicacies offered to him, Bai again became carried away by his box, losing all interest in his owner. Sam was interested in what attracted the puppy's attention so much. When he took the box and found out that it was dietary fiber powder, the guy looked at the pet in bewilderment. A few minutes later, a satisfied Bai was eating the delicacy that had interested him earlier. The hero watched in disbelief as the puppy actively ate weight loss food intended for girls. Studying the inscriptions on the box, he remembered that Linda also loved this brand and was going to buy something similar. Remembering this, the guy's mood deteriorated because it was his fault that Linda disappeared on that fateful day. Our hero really liked the girl and he decided to finally confess to her. In the evening, he made an appointment for her in a secluded place on their island. They walked slowly near the seashore. Sam was very shy and did not know where to start. Linda felt the excitement coming from the guy and asked why he called her here. This question took our hero by surprise, and he could not give her a clear answer, silently opening and closing his mouth. Without getting an answer from him, she turned around, calling him a fool. Suddenly, something in the sky caught her attention. The joyful girl pointed to the sky, telling Sam to also pay attention to such a beautiful phenomenon as the northern lights, which was completely uncharacteristic of their area. Without taking his eyes off the girl, he nodded in agreement, saying that it was very beautiful. At some point, her face flushed red and she looked at Sam. Suddenly, she stopped and said that she had liked him for a long time. The hero did not expect to hear a confession from her, and not believing what had happened, asked what she had just said. Taking as much air into her lungs as possible, Linda shouted that she liked him and wanted to be his girlfriend. Sam was very happy to hear that his feelings were mutual. He was going to answer her that he loved her too, but the severe headache that appeared at that moment did not allow this. Linda noticed that the guy suddenly held his head and worriedly asked if he was okay. Suddenly, a strange glow surrounded her. Feeling something strange, Sam raised his head and looked in Linda's direction with horror. The girl unsuccessfully tried to break through the invisible wall that surrounded her. When the hero touched the invisible fence, he was hit by a strong electric shock. Due to the pain piercing his entire body, the hero slowly began to lose consciousness. When he woke up, Linda was nowhere to be found. Sam thanked Snowball for always helping him because without him, the hero would have been killed long ago. At the same moment, the wolf cub felt a certain threat. He jumped onto his owner's sofa and began growling into the void. Looking at Snowball's strange behavior, Sam realized that someone dangerous was approaching them. In a matter of seconds, he approached the wall and carefully looked out the window to reconnoiter the situation. He didn't like what he saw there. Many werewolves were approaching the house. Suddenly, one of the monsters burst into the room, breaking through the wall with its powerful body. The current situation took the guy by surprise. He never expected to find himself alone with a werewolf in his own home. The hero did not have time to do anything when he was attacked by the enemy. Bai jumped out of the hands of the fallen Sam and came to his defense. The guy didn't understand how the werewolves managed to find this place so quickly. The next moment he spat out the accumulated blood. Sam guessed that his internal organs might have been damaged, which would be very unfortunate, because even more werewolves came. Looking around the room, he was sure that this time he would definitely not survive. Sam shouted for Bai to run away as quickly as possible, because they couldn't survive together. But he was not going to leave his master in trouble and rushed at the enemy, enveloping him in icy air. Looking at this, Sam tried his best to shout to the puppy so that he would save himself. But Bai stubbornly ignores him, fighting with werewolves. His own powerlessness in such a situation greatly wounded our hero from the inside. He again shouted to the pet to leave. Hearing the despair in his master's voice, Bai turned around. But he did not intend to leave Sam to die here alone. He decided to protect him at all costs. The next moment, the werewolf attacked him, and Bai jumped into the air, avoiding the blow. However, he was unable to dodge the claws of another werewolf. Sam watched in horror as the wounded Bai fell to the floor. The guy crawled on his elbows to the motionless body of the puppy. Taking Bai into his arms, he said that she should have listened to him and run away. At the same time, the werewolves were slowly approaching their prey. The hero has already come to terms with his death and said that at least they will go to heaven together. After that, he pulled Bai closer to him, leaning his forehead against hers. The next moment, the room was illuminated by a bright light. At the same time, Sam found himself in his subconscious. There he saw a painfully familiar female silhouette. The guy slowly approached the girl, not believing his eyes. When he crossed the distance that separated them, Sam hugged his beloved with tears in his eyes, saying that he had been looking for her all this time. But contrary to his expectations, Linda replied that their meeting was not a reason for joy. Turning the girl towards him, Sam excitedly asked if she was okay. In response, she quietly said that if that day he had not taken her to that ill-fated place, then everything would have been different. The next moment, Linda raised her head and said angrily that if she had, she would not have died. Listening to her, he tried to object, saying that she was mistaken. In response to his words, the girl smiled and said that if everything was as he said, then he was obliged to prove to her that he was not a weakling. At the same moment, our hero's body was enveloped in a blue glow, and he began to slowly rise from the floor. Fury blazed in his eyes. Sam was determined to get rid of all his enemies. A moment later, one of the werewolves ran towards him. Suddenly, Sam's pupils took on a vertical shape like an animal. He held back the werewolf's pressure with his bare hands, preventing him from hurting himself. At some point, the monster's hands began to become covered with a thick layer of ice, which spread further throughout the body every second. Without letting go of the monster's hand, Sam jumped, becoming on the same level as his opponent. The next moment, he sank his teeth into the werewolf's body. From the pain of the flesh being torn off, the monster fell on its back. The The hero was glad that he finally managed to show his strong side and confront the enemy on his own. At the same time, Linda's gentle voice whispered to him to kill everyone who stands in front of him without any hesitation. The guy rushed at the two werewolves standing in front. Time seemed to freeze for the monsters. The speed at which Sam was moving was too great. He dealt with the enemies literally in a second, rushing past them with lightning speed. Only a trail of blood from the killed monsters followed him. Bai slowly approached her master from behind. Sam came to his senses when he heard the puppy calling him. The hero looked at his hand in bewilderment. He could not understand where the strange sensations in his whole body came from. Bai came closer to him and grabbed the edge of her master's jacket with her teeth. Noticing that Bai was trying to pull him somewhere, Sam looked at the pet, asking what she was trying to do. In response, Bai let go of the fabric and headed somewhere forward, hinting that the guy should follow her. A sudden bright light made Sam cover his eyes. The image of Linda, dear to his heart, appeared before him again. The next moment, the happy girl rushed to him, taking Sam into her arms. She was glad that he was back. The guy was also happy to be reunited with his beloved and followed her example by hugging her. They stood in this position for several seconds, which lasted for Sam like several hours. At some point, he opened his eyes, returning to reality. Looking at his palms, the guy did not understand what had just happened to him. Raising his head, he saw the headless corpses of monsters in front of him. Sam couldn't believe that he did all this. Suddenly, he remembered how he met Linda in his dream. Immediately after this, pictures of how he personally dealt with werewolves began to appear in his head. The memories that came upon him gave him a severe headache. A few moments later, the pain subsided and the hero tried to analyze what happened and understand how exactly he managed it all. All this time, Bai stood next to him, sadly watching the torment of her master. Looking down, Sam met his pet's eyes. When they got outside, the night was gradually coming to an end. The hero stopped, looking sadly at his now former home for the last time. Sometime later, Sam and Bai went into another house, which the guy had prepared in advance for such a case. Looking around the room filled with boxes of supplies, the hero was sure that this would be enough for them while they recovered. Sitting down on the floor, Sam pulled Bai onto his lap, telling her that next time she wouldn't have to risk herself to save him. Then he began to treat her wounds with a napkin previously moistened with alcohol. A few minutes later, he noted that Bai's condition had improved greatly, and his own wounds also no longer seemed so serious. Sam then bandaged Bai's body to avoid infection. He picked her up and, looking into her eyes, told her to always listen to his orders from now on. But in response, the puppy bit his hand. The guy looked at Bai offendedly, not understanding why she did this to him. Sometime later, Sam got out of the shower. Running his hand over the foggy glass, he noticed that his wounds had indeed healed very quickly. He carefully examined his body for a few more moments. Suddenly, the hero hit the adjacent wall with his fist. The tile under his fist crumbled and a hole appeared in the wall. Sam was surprised to realize that not only had the pain gone, but his strength had increased significantly. Coming out of the bathroom, he noticed Bai sleeping nearby and assumed that the changes in him were somehow connected with her. Taking another towel, the guy headed towards the puppy, after which he carefully covered Bai with a towel, trying not to disturb her sleep. Sam took a pillow and blanket and lay down next to her, thanking her for helping him. As soon as he closed his eyes, the hero immediately fell into a deep, restless sleep, in which he again desperately searched for Linda. He heard her cries for help from different directions, but no matter how much he looked around, Sam could not understand where she was. The guy wandered in the dark, guided only by the screams of his beloved. Bai woke up and looked at her owner with sadness in her eyes. For several minutes he had been calling Linda through his sleep. Deciding to help him at least a little, Bai jumped from her seat and climbed under the blanket next to Sam. She lay down next to him, touching his cheek with her forehead. At some point, her fur began to lengthen, turning blue. A few moments later, a beautiful blue-haired girl lay next to Sam. Noticing that he felt a little better, she closed her eyes, falling into sleep. The rays of the sun breaking into the room woke up our hero. He rubbed his eyes sleepily, realizing that it was already morning. A rustle that came somewhere to the side made Sam flinch in surprise. The guy looked to the side and was surprised to find a stranger next to him. He tried to understand how this stranger got to him, because he definitely locked the door. As Linda turned onto her back, Sam accidentally touched her shoulder. He immediately pulled his hand back and looked at his palm in bewilderment. The next moment, he was struck by the realization that a girl was lying next to him. Pulling himself together, Sam warily asked who the stranger was and what she was doing in his house. The girl took a sitting position and sleepily rubbed her eyes. Seeing her face, Sam was amazed. Linda was sitting in front of him. He immediately hugged her, happy that she was finally back. Realizing that he was hugging her bare skin, the hero instantly pulled away from her, and his face was filled with thick paint. The guy jumped to his feet and turned away, apologizing to her. With his back to her, he told her to quickly get dressed. Linda instead walked up to Sam and began to carefully peer into his face. The next moment, to his surprise, the girl licked his cheek, making the guy blush. Taking a step back, he asked in surprise what she was doing. Even despite the reciprocity of their feelings, he was not ready for such a rapid development of their relationship. Seeing Sam's face turn red, the girl used her ability and sent a cold blast of air onto his face. This clearly helped, and now, instead of embarrassment, our hero's face showed surprise mixed with bewilderment. He drew attention to the wounds on the girl's arms and shoulders, and a crazy guess came to him. Sam decided to make sure of this and dispel his doubts. He asked if she was bi. In response, the girl licked the guy on the cheek again. Some time later, the hero managed to find a box of clothes suitable for Linda. Embarrassed, he handed her the neatly folded soft cloth. He watched as the girl tried to understand what this or that item of clothing was intended for. Exhaling heavily, Sam offered her his help, realizing that the girl did not know how to dress on her own. Trying not to look at her, he helped her get dressed. The guy convinced himself that this was not the real Linda, but just Little Bai. Although he desperately tried to convince himself of this, it was really difficult to believe. Her appearance constantly convinced him otherwise. A few agonizingly long minutes later, they finally finished, and Sam lay down tiredly on the floor, saying that dressing another person was really hard. He was glad that Linda's spare clothes were in the warehouse, but he was tormented by the question of why Bai took on an image so dear to his heart. He could not help but perceive her as the real Linda. Every day Sam understood less and less what was happening. When the girl approached him, he turned his head towards her, saying that he wanted to stay with her in a safe place and wait for help. But he had not seen rescuers for a long time, and the situation in other areas was unknown to him. Sitting down, the guy admitted that he was worried about his parents and the real Linda. He looked at his palm for several seconds, doubting his new abilities. Sighing, Sam turned his attention back to the girl, saying that he still knew too little about what happened 2 months ago and where all these monsters came from. Linda looked at the guy with interest all this time. A moment later, she moved closer to him and lay down on his lap. Sometime later, they got out, and Sam scouted out the situation, carefully studying the neighboring streets through binoculars. He was not happy that this entire area had been captured by werewolves. Looking into the distance, the hero wondered where the other survivors might be. His attention was drawn to Linda, who was staring somewhere. Concern arose in his heart, and he approached her, asking where she was looking. In response, the girl pointed her finger at a point in front of her, and Sam took the binoculars again, trying to figure out what was there. He saw 4 people running away from the monsters. Lewis led his comrades, hoping to break away from the pursuit. But suddenly a werewolf appeared in front of them, blocking the way. Everyone began to panic because they were at a dead end. Pulling himself together, the oldest man in the group shouted that they had no choice but to engage in battle with the monster. The woman asked how he was going to do this when they didn't even have normal weapons against a strong and agile opponent. Suddenly their attention was attracted by someone shouting from above. Linda used her ice breath ability and attacked the werewolf. In an instant, it was covered with a thick layer of ice. Sam finally got rid of the enemy, breaking him into small fragments. He then turned to the team of people and asked if they were okay. They looked in horror at the pair of people standing in front of them, who destroyed the monster with their bare hands. Driven by fear, they ran screaming as far as possible from here. Not noticing the huge shadow approaching them, Sam turned to his partner with confusion and asked why they ran away from them. Suddenly, a loud roar from a werewolf was heard from behind. The hero immediately turned around at this sound. Looking at him, the guy noted that this werewolf was different from his relatives. Looking at Linda, he noticed her strong tension. At some point, the werewolf began to be surrounded by small bolts of lightning. The hero approached the girl, saying that this time they had met a strong enemy. They stood motionless for several seconds, waiting for the monster to attack. Sam noticed that for some reason his body began to feel heavier than before. At the same moment, the werewolf attacked them, but Sam and Linda jumped to the top, avoiding the claws of the enemy. The guy shouted for his partner to freeze the werewolf. She listened to his words and used her ability. But the monster began to growl, and the lightning bolts became stronger. When the lightning hit Sam and Linda, they could not dodge, and a sharp pain pierced their bodies. The guy managed to land on his feet. He suggested that the difficulty in movement was due to the ability of lightning. Sam took a few steps back, realizing that if they got too close to the werewolf, the body would become difficult to control and they would have to avoid close attacks. He saw no way out of this situation with their current abilities. So the guy grabbed Linda's hand and ran away from the monster. A few minutes later, they were inside the shopping center. Hiding behind one of the many walls, Sam decided to catch his breath here and carefully watch the entrance. The monster followed them and tried to determine where its victim was hiding. Studying the contents of his backpack, the guy came to the conclusion that he did not have any weapons, not even an ordinary knife. Suddenly, Linda handed him what looked like a knife made of ice. Sam thanked her and took the weapon offered to him. The next moment, he approached the girl and asked in surprise if she could create various objects from ice. Linda smiled and nodded her head. Thanks to the weapon he received, the hero had a chance to defeat the werewolf. At the same time, the monster looked around, looking for its victim. Suddenly, something flashed behind him. When an ice knife flew at him, the werewolf reacted in time and knocked it back. At that moment, Sam came out of hiding, armed with several ice knives. Then he threw them all at his opponent in the hope that he would not be able to dodge them all. But it was not difficult for the werewolf to cut the knives flying at him with his claws. After that, he let out a furious roar. The hero's idea was a success. He angered the monster and provoked him to run after him. The hero quickly climbed up the stairs to the second floor, luring the werewolf into a trap. The monster was quickly catching up with its victim, surprising Sam. He did not think that the owner of such a massive body would be so mobile. Looking ahead, the guy noticed that he had almost reached the right place. A couple of moments later, Sam reached the fence and jumped over it. The monster also jumped after him. Sam had already managed to land on the ice of the skating rink. When the werewolf landed opposite him, the ice under his paws began to crack. Holding onto the fence, the hero asked the werewolf if he knew what a skating rink was. With every second, more and more deep cracks appeared on the surface. At one point, the ice under the monster finally broke, and the water beneath it began to turn into many ice needles. They pierced the werewolf's body, passing right through and depriving him of the ability to move. Sam breathed a sigh of relief. They were lucky that there was only one enemy. If there had been several of them, they would never have been able to cope. When the girl approached him, he smiled, saying that her abilities were very useful. They smiled at each other, enjoying their victory, not noticing the appearance of yellow bubbles from the body of the defeated enemy. When there were more of them, Sam noticed this strange phenomenon. He was interested to know what it was, and he touched one of the bubbles. At the same moment, several bubbles exploded next to him and several electric discharges hit the guy in the head. Linda, who did not understand anything, looked at him with concern. Holding his head, Sam said something was trying to control his brain. He leaned on the railing to keep from falling. With every second, something that penetrated his head became stronger and tried to drive the guy's consciousness out of his body. Suddenly he growled, and the silhouette of a defeated werewolf burst out of his body. Frightened, Linda involuntarily took a step back. Fighting with himself, Sam told her to move as far away from him as possible. He warned her that he was about to lose control of himself. Seeing that there was no reaction to his words, he shouted for her to run away from here now. Contrary to his orders, the girl approached him and kissed him. He immediately pulled her away from him, asking what she was doing. When the headache came back, the guy asked Linda to listen to him and leave. But she remained standing in place, looking at the guy who was holding back the invisible enemy with his last strength. A moment later, the monster took over Sam's mind. After that, he rushed at the girl standing next to him. She did not have time to react and fell to the floor along with the guy. At this moment, the hero managed to regain control of his body for a few seconds. Linda reached out and touched his cheek. The next moment, she pulled him towards her and kissed him. Sam's eyes widened in surprise. When the girl pulled away from him, he felt a little better. Linda noticed how the crease between the guy's eyebrows smoothed out, and his condition improved a little. Having decided something for himself, Sam again pressed his lips to the girl's lips in an awkward kiss. They kissed for several long seconds. The guy felt that Linda used her frosty breath ability. When he ran out of air, the hero pulled away from the girl. The uninvited guest left his body. But the next moment, he was overcome with excitement. Tired Linda lay on his face with her eyes closed. Having made sure that she was not injured, the guy exhaled tiredly and lay down next to her. They lay silently on the floor, listening only to each other's steady heartbeat. Suddenly, Linda snuggled closer to Sam. He looked at her and smiled tenderly. She helps him every time he is on the verge of death. Remembering their recent kiss, the guy's face flushed red again. As if sensing what he was thinking, a blushing Linda used frosty breath on him. Then she covered her mouth with her hand, calling the guy a pervert. He sighed and looked at her doomedly. A moment later, he realized that the girl had learned to speak. Sam asked why she suddenly took on this persona. The girl replied that she changed because the guy wanted it. After her words, the hero became sad. Deep down, he hoped that she could be the real Linda. Based on the information received, Sam assumed that she was able to read his thoughts, since she was able to understand who exactly he wanted to see and recreate the image of this person. Linda confirmed his assumption. He nodded, saying that he should indulge less in his fantasies regarding his lover. The hero decided to switch to another topic, asking the girl where she came from and why she appeared here. Linda admitted that she didn't remember anything about it. Sighing in disappointment, Sam stood up from the floor, after which he angrily hit the wall, unconsciously using the power of lightning. He was angry at the lack of at least some information about what was happening to his world. When the guy looked at his hand, he was surprised to note that this was the same ability as the werewolf he had defeated. Sam theorized that he got it after he absorbed the monster's aura after it died. Linda came up to him, took his hand, and asked if everything was okay with him. Despite his assurances that everything was fine with him, the girl began to lick his bruised hand. Suddenly he realized that after the last victory over the werewolf, Linda turned into a human, and now she began to talk. Grabbing her by the shoulders, the guy joyfully exclaimed that most likely all their changes were related to the number of monsters killed. After hearing this suggestion, the girl looked at him doubtfully. Exhaling, Sam said that they would have to test this theory on their own experience, after which he took his backpack, saying that they need to move on. But the girl remained standing there. Sam turned around and asked why she wasn't coming. She said that if the hero likes him, then he should call her Linda, and if not, then bye. The surprised guy stared at her for several moments. Then he approached her and stroked her head, calling her Linda. A few minutes later, they were outside again. Coming around the corner of the house, Sam warned Linda to be careful. Having made sure that the path was clear, they moved on. The guy was glad that their fight did not attract other monsters. Suddenly, he noticed a backpack lying on the road. They came closer and an unpleasant picture opened before them. Those guys they saved earlier were brutally killed by another werewolf. Sam sank down next to someone else's backpack. He was sorry that he could not save them from something like this. Suddenly, someone approached them from behind and pointed a gun at Sam and Linda, telling them not to move. The hero rose from his knees and, noticing the girl's fighting spirit, asked her not to attack. The boys shouted for the strangers to move away from the bodies of their friends, after which one of them ran up and examined the dead bodies of his comrades. Richard turned to Sam and pointed a knife at him, asking why they killed his friends. Without waiting for an answer, the boy shouted that he would definitely take revenge for their murder. The guy frowned, calling Richard an idiot. After that, he used his new ability and sent an electrical discharge towards the boys. Richard threw the knife aside and it fell at Sam's feet. Picking it up, the guy said that the wounds left on the bodies of their friends could only be inflicted by a werewolf. Coming closer, he pointed the knife at Richard, saying that even if chaos reigned everywhere now, they should not attack everyone with weapons. A guy suddenly appeared, shouted to Sam to stop, and was ready to attack. Linda reacted faster than Sam and hurried to block the enemy's path. She made it in time and used her ice to block the enemy's fire. The hero was amazed that someone could control fire. Pulling himself together, he told Linda that they had to deal with that guy as quickly as possible so as not to attract the attention of the monsters, after which he poured some of his power into the ice barrier. A moment later, the barrier was destroyed. Seeing the lightning in Sam's hand, Alexander was very surprised that two strangers had superpowers. Suddenly, Sam moved from his seat, approaching Alexander. A few seconds before the collision, he managed to activate his fire. With each passing moment, the flames only grew stronger, and Sam was powerless against it. But Alexander did not even think about weakening the fire to allow the enemy to get to him. The hero jumped back a few meters and watched Alexander for several seconds, whose flames gradually calmed down. Suddenly, a monster howl was heard, attracting everyone's attention. A few meters from Alexander stood a crowd of werewolves. Sam blocked Linda with himself, and after analyzing the behavior of the monsters, assumed that they were not their goal. Switching to a whisper, he said that they needed to take advantage of the moment and escape. When Sam turned around and took a few steps, he heard Alexander's voice, who said that he would definitely protect everyone. The words of this boy resonated unpleasantly in the heart of our hero, and he clenched his fist, holding back the force rushing out. He couldn't afford to run away like a coward again. Alexander covered his comrades with himself, waiting for the right moment to attack. Suddenly, one of the werewolves rushed straight at him. Linda immediately froze the monster, preventing it from moving further. Sam, in turn, physically broke the frozen enemy into pieces. Then he ran out in front of Alexander and his friends, shouting for them to move as far away as possible. The hero was alone with several werewolves. Kneeling down, he unleashed a blast of electricity into the ground, striking his opponents. A couple of moments later, the werewolves fell dead. Sam noticed that using this ability was using up too much of his strength. Suddenly, he felt severe pain in the area of his heart. Sam didn't understand what was happening and why his heart began to squeeze. Alexander destroyed the werewolf who wanted to attack Sam. Afterwards, he returned to his friends, asking if everything was okay with them. Having made sure that everything was fine with the boys, Alexander thanked our hero for the help he provided to them. Suddenly, Greg intervened in the conversation, saying that Sam and his companion had killed several of his acquaintances. Alexander hit him on the head, saying that if this were so, then this guy would not help them. Linda noticed that something was wrong with Sam and looked at him worriedly. Suddenly, he began coughing up blood, after which he lost consciousness. A few hours later, the guy began to come to his senses. Opening his eyes, he saw Linda sitting with tears in her eyes. Smiling tiredly, the guy called the girl by name. Patting her on the head, he said that everything was fine with him and there was no need for her to shed tears. Unexpectedly, the hero felt someone pulling off his clothes. He asked Linda why she was doing this, but she replied that she had not done anything like that and put her hands in front of her. Raising his head, Sam saw the stranger lift up his t-shirt and examine his stomach. At some point, she sank even lower. Sam's face turned red from the embarrassing situation. He had no idea what was going on here. Suddenly, the blonde beauty touched his belt buckle and began to unfasten it. Snatching the belt from her, red to the tips of his ears, Sam asked what she was doing. Melissa replied that she was just examining his wounds. Sam replied that he was not injured and did not see the need for this kind of check, but the girl only smiled gently. Afterwards, she stood up and said that in this case she would not take off his pants if he lay still. Looking at Linda, Melissa asked if she was his girlfriend. The hero only looked at her with confusion. The blonde girl took Linda's hand and asked her to help her loosen Sam's belt. Embarrassed, the girl touched the belt and began to unfasten it. Our poor hero's face turned red again. He felt very awkward when two beautiful girls unbuttoned his pants. Suddenly, Melissa looked at Sam's face, checking his reaction. Seeing his expression, she chuckled and said that he was actually a lecher. After that, the girl put her hands on his stomach, saying that she hoped that after the treatment, he would be just as cheerful. The next moment, a green haze began to emanate from her palms, and Sam felt pain where her hands were. Melissa said that she has healing abilities and is now going to start treating his internal organs, so he needs to be patient. Suddenly, she said that the guy was very lucky. He absorbed a large amount of animal energy and remained alive. Sam's painful screams continued for another hour. When the treatment was completed, Melissa tiredly sank into a chair. She said that she cured all his internal wounds caused by bestial energy. Afterwards, she said that now she needed to go and rest, and Sam and Linda could do whatever they wanted. Having said this, the girl immediately fell asleep, causing bewilderment in the guy. However, the next moment, surprise was reflected on the face that Melissa woke up as quickly as she fell asleep. For some reason unknown to Sam, her face turned red, and she excitedly asked what they were doing here. Then she got up from the chair and ran out with her eyes closed, saying that they could continue, and she would not bother them. The hero, who did not understand anything, looked at Linda, asking what Melissa, who had just run away, was talking about. A few minutes later, Linda helped Sam downstairs to join the rest of the boys. Alexander noticed the arrivals and said that Sam looked much better than before. The hero smiled and thanked him for your concern. Alexander replied that at the present time, everyone needs mutual assistance. Suddenly, one of the girls ran up to them and said that she had very important news. They finally managed to receive a radio signal from the city of N. Alexander and Sam's faces showed great surprise. Sometime later, our heroes moved to the control room and Anna turned on the recording, from which they learned that since July, mutated animals began to appear in all corners of the world, and the city of N also suffered greatly. It was also said that with the help of the army, they managed to take control of the situation, but due to the disruption of transport and communication systems, rescue operations will temporarily not be carried out. Alexander asked if it was possible to contact someone from City N, but Anna replied that this was impossible. She explained that after the advent of laser radiation, the satellite systems also malfunctioned. They tried to send a letter by fax, but never received a response. The guy didn't like what he heard and started screaming for the girl to continue sending messages as long as possible. Anna just nodded her head sadly. Sam and Linda looked from the monitor to Alexander. Covering his eyes with his hand, he apologized, saying that he was a little out of his mind. Anna looked at him and said that everything is fine. She will continue sending messages until she receives a response from the city of N. Turning around, he headed out of the room, thanking her for her concern. Once in the corridor, the guy slowly slid down the wall. Sam approached him and tried to console him, saying that he shouldn't worry so much because they now knew that the city of N was relatively safe, is in relative safety. Alexander agreed that he was very worried about this. He explained that people going out in search of supplies were increasingly dying at the hands of werewolves, some even deciding to commit suicide due to extreme pressure. Sam listened to him silently. He himself understood perfectly well what it was like to try to survive alone and not die from the clutches of monsters. Raising his head, Alexander admitted that he was afraid that one day he might simply not be able to stand it all. Sam knelt down next to him and said that he should look at it from another perspective, because he seemed much stronger than the others. Afterwards, the hero looked at the guys who were rushing around the hall and sorting out boxes of supplies. He said that in such turbulent times as now, many have to sacrifice themselves, but it is still impossible to save absolutely everyone. Smiling, the guy said that for those whom Alexander had already saved, he was a real hero. After listening to him, Alexander slowly stood up. Afterwards, he extended his hand to Sam and said that his name was Alexander and he was a teacher at the second school in the city of N, and asked what the hero's name was. Sam shook his hand, introducing himself, and said that he was a student at Beijing University. Afterwards, the hero looked down again and noted that many here were dressed in school uniforms. He asked how they managed to get to this island. Coming out of the adjacent room with 3 cans of cola, Alexander replied that they had come here on an excursion, but unforeseen circumstances forced them to stay longer. Sam asked if he knew anything about the appearance of werewolves. Giving him a can of drink, Alexander replied that he knew little about it. He only knew that on the day the northern lights appeared, many people disappeared. He saw this glow and then lost consciousness. While he was passed out, he was transferred to a safe place. Sam asked how Alexander got his powers. Looking at him, the guy replied that he didn't know it himself. He discovered his gift of fire control since Melissa saved him. Looking at the blonde girl standing below, Alexander said that if Sam wants to find out more information like this, then he better contact Melissa. He explained that the girl used to work as a nurse at the school. Although she is not particularly talkative, she should know quite a lot of information. Sam asked why the guy thought that. Alexander replied that that day she did not disappear after being hit by a strange ray. Afterwards, he asked what Sam intended to do next, but he replied that he had not thought about it yet. He just wanted to go out and see, maybe even learn something about what was happening in the world. After listening to him, Alexander invited him to join their group. They could protect each other. Sam was surprised that he was offered to join someone's team. Alexander promised in this case to take him to Melissa. Suddenly, someone intervened in their conversation and displeasedly asked why Alexander invited just anyone to their group. Derek said their resources were too limited and they didn't need extra mouths to feed. Alexander ignored these words and wanted to introduce his guests to the man. Derek's gaze fell on Linda. He asked why he had not seen this girl anywhere before. Coming closer to her, he said that he understood the reason why Alexander invited them to the group, and that reason was the girl. When the man extended his hand to Linda, Sam grabbed his hand. Looking at Derek with fury, the guy said that he should watch his words. When the hero began to twist his wrist, the man howled in pain and shouted that his uncle was the one who opened this school, and his uncle would not leave Sam unpunished. Excited, Alexander asked Sam to let Derek go because his uncle was really in charge here. The teacher tried in every possible way to calm Sam down, but it seemed that he was turning a deaf ear. A few moments later, when the guards came to them, the hero still let Derek go. Once safe, he ordered 2 men to immediately deal with his offender and broke his arms. Following his orders, 2 guards rushed at Sam. Derek was confident that his people would deal with the arrogant boy in a matter of seconds. However, everything went against his expectations. Both guards were thrown into the wall by Sam. The next moment, Derek felt the palm of a finger on his face. Sam asked who was going to break whose hands here. Alexander watched in horror and tried his best to calm Sam so that he would not make a mistake driven by his emotions. But the hero really didn't listen to what the teacher was trying to convey to him and slammed Derek's face into the wall. When he let go of the hand that was holding the man, Derek's body began to slowly fall down, leaving behind bloody stains. Sam said that if he behaves like he did today again, then next time the hero will decorate all the walls in this school with Derek's face. After that, he headed towards the exit, telling Linda that they had to go, while a worried Alexander sat down next to the unconscious man, not knowing what to do. When they left the building, it was already night outside. Sam set up the tent he found earlier outside, where he and Linda will spend the night today. The guy had been staring at his palm for some time. Remembering today's incident, he tried to understand why he became so hot-tempered. Sighing, the guy assumed that the aura of werewolves affected him in a similar way. Looking at the girl lying next to him, he remembered that now he had one more important thing to do. He must figure out a way to get Linda to break her habit of sleeping naked because her body is too tempting for him to resist. Sam snapped out of his fantasy when he heard the girl call his name, but he was distracted again when his imagination painted a picture of an embarrassed Linda who asked him to warm her up. He approached the girl, stretching out his lips for a kiss. Linda used her icy breath to block Sam's attempts to kiss her, after which she lay on his lap saying that he shouldn't think about perversions. An embarrassed Sam dried his wet hair with a towel and explained that any normal guy would react the same way if he saw Linda sleeping. Blushing, the girl replied that she was not yet ready for this kind of thing. The hero thought about what she just said. Suddenly the thought arose in his head that perhaps in the future Linda would want to do this with him. Noticing that Sam was again thinking about lewd things, Linda once again used her icy breath to cool his ardor. At the same time, loud voices were heard from the director's office. Derek vowed to get to Sam and destroy him while the doctor treated his damaged nose. He did not forget about Alexander, saying that he was simply watching his torment. The man asked his father to send people with superpowers after Sam. France replied that this was just an ordinary guy and destroying him in this way would be a waste of energy. Smiling insidiously, the man said that Derek should wait a little. They would deal with him after they carried out their plan. At the same time, Sam lay and thought about his parents. He hoped that they were safe now, because they work on military bases. Linda was already fast asleep, clinging to the guy's warm body. In his heart, Sam was still not sure who exactly this girl was. Bai or Linda? If it was Bai, then where did the real Linda go? Rising up on his elbows, he pulled the blanket that had slipped off the girl higher. Looking at Linda snoring peacefully, he remembered how many times he had dreamed of spending the night with his beloved, but never would have thought that it would happen like this. As he ran her lock of hair between his fingers, he thought that no matter who she really was, in the end he could view this situation as the fulfillment of one of his many desires. Kissing the girl on the forehead, Sam wished her good night. This night has passed and a new day has come to replace it. The birds sitting on our hero's tent sang their songs, waking up the guy. That night, Sam couldn't get a good night's sleep because of the girl cuddling him. He didn't understand how a normal man could fall asleep in such a situation. Covering his eyes with his hand, he asked himself whether this was all happiness or torture. Thinking about what would happen if one day he lost control, Sam headed outside. Once outside, he saw Melissa in the backyard of the school. Approaching her, Sam greeted the girl. She turned around at his voice and hesitantly wished him good morning. The guy thanked her for Melissa curing him yesterday. Embarrassed, she replied that it was not worth thanking. Afterwards, the girl said that if he had nothing to do with her, then she needed to go. Sam called out to her, saying that he wanted to ask her about the northern lights. Melissa stopped and clarified what they were talking about. The guy explained that that night a lot of strange rays appeared, because of which many people disappeared without a trace. He shared that he also knew that Melissa was the only one who did not disappear after this ray. Suddenly the girl lost consciousness, but Sam managed to catch her before her body fell to the ground. The guy was amazed at the girl's ability to fall asleep anywhere. A few seconds later, Melissa opened her eyes. After that, the girl looked carefully at the guy's face and said that judging by his bags under his eyes, he and Linda worked hard last night. Cupping his face in her hands, she said that young people need to be able to control themselves. Otherwise, it will be too troublesome to look for a new girl after Linda leaves him. Sam replied that she had it all wrong. He was surprised at how quickly a person's behavior could change. Melissa smiled, ostensibly asking if that was true. The next moment, she clung to him, running her fingers over his stomach. The stunned hero asked the girl to stop. Suddenly, he felt the air temperature around him drop sharply. All this time, Linda stood behind the guy and watched the cute cooing of these two. When Sam turned around, he found an angry expression on the girl's face. Linda approached him and blocked the guy with herself, saying that Melissa should not teach him all sorts of strange things. The girl just laughed and asked why Linda was holding him so tightly, because no one was going to take Sam away from her. Having straightened a curl that had gotten out of her hair, Melissa said that she was no longer going to tease her. Turning her back to them, she said that she could tell everything she knew about the rays. But before that, the girl set one condition. Sam asked what this condition was. Turning around, she replied that she wanted to be with him. The hero couldn't believe his ears and asked if she really wanted to be with him. Smiling, the girl replied that, although she has the ability to heal, she does not have the ability to fight, which is why she must find a reliable partner who can protect her. Sam hesitantly suggested that since Alexander also had a strong ability, it would not be more logical to be close to him, especially since they worked at the same school, rather than offer something like that to a stranger. Approaching the guy, Melissa poked him in the chest, saying that he had a third-party program. Sam didn't understand what she meant. The girl explained that after the radiation, many people acquired abilities. Alexander had only one of many supernatural abilities that awoke naturally. Such people can increase their strength only through exercise, but their progress is very slow. Sam is different from these people. He is able to quickly improve his abilities by hunting monsters. This is all explained by the fact that he has a special ability that allows him to enter into an agreement with werewolves. Melissa said that Sam is the same as ordinary monsters, but he has a program that can absorb the powers and souls of killed monsters. Sam was amazed when he learned that he was able to form a contract with werewolves. Smiling, Melissa asked if his sweet companion had told him everything. Turning to Linda, Sam asked with desperation in his voice if she had made a contract with him so that he would have powers. Looking away, the girl replied that everything was so. Having received her answer, the guy asked where the real Linda was. The girl hesitated, not knowing what to answer him. Suddenly, Melissa intervened in the conversation, saying that there was a possibility that she was the real Linda. Sam looked at her with confusion. He said she used to be a regular white puppy. Melissa explained that in fact, because of those rays, no one disappeared from this world, just some people became werewolves. It was difficult for the guy to accept this, and he asked how this was even possible. Grabbing his chin, the girl reminded him of the conditions. The guy had not yet promised to take her under his protection. Then she let him go, saying that it was time for her to go, and Sam should think carefully about her proposal. Having said this, she passed out again and fell into his arms. Sam was once again amazed that the girl fell asleep so quickly. Linda moved the tip of a strand of hair near Melissa's ear, checking whether she was really asleep. A few moments later, Melissa opened her eyes. Seeing Sam's face in front of her, the girl blushed deeply again. After that, covering her eyes with her palms, she rushed away from here. The guy shouted out that he still had many questions, but the answer was a loud slam of the door. Sam looked at the door in bewilderment, trying to understand what had just happened. Turning his gaze to Linda, he remembered her words that she might indeed be his lost lover. Along with this came the realization that all the werewolves he had previously killed were also people. At that moment, Alexander approached them. Stopping opposite Sam, he said that the director of this school wanted to see him. Some time later, the three of them walked along the long corridors of the school, the walls of which were hung with countless awards and portraits, which Sam carefully examined along the way. Alexander asked his friend to be careful when meeting the director. Sam said that he shouldn't worry about it. The guy promised to try his best to restrain himself so as not to cause unnecessary problems. The teacher thanked the guy and, stopping at one of the doors, said that they were there. After that, he knocked on the door saying that Sam was here. A couple of minutes later, they were all already in the director's office. Derek asked what he didn't understand about his uncle's words when he told Sam to kneel. The hero was already barely able to restrain himself from attacking Derek right there, but Alexander touched his shoulder, reminding him of the recent conversation. The man standing at the window told his nephew to kneel, but he was indignant, asking why he should do this. Derek wasn't happy about having to kneel in front of the one who hurt him. France slapped him in the face. He was not the kind of person who was used to hearing objections to his orders. Towering over Derek, he recalled that he always talked about the need to join forces and save as many survivors as possible. But despite all his instructions, Derek constantly creates problems for him. If he were not his nephew, he would have been kicked out of here long ago. Alexander tried to intervene and calm the man, but France raised his hand, gesturing for him not to interfere. Afterwards, the man ordered his nephew to go back to the room and think about his behavior, and without his permission, he also forbade Derek to leave there. Derek had no choice but to accept such punishment. After this, he retired from his uncle's study. Having seated his guests, France asked if they had heard yesterday's broadcast. Having received an answer in the form of short nods, the man said that, judging by the current situation, they should not be saved, so he plans to increase the scale of their shelter and help as many people as possible. Alex intervened and said that since most of them were ordinary students and only he had the ability, it would be great if Sam joined them. Smiling, the director admitted that he called them here because he hoped that Sam would be able to stay and help them find supplies and rescue survivors. The hero replied that despite the fact that he and Linda have abilities, they are still students and are unlikely to be of much use. The director stood up from his seat and said that Sam could offer his terms on which he was ready to stay, and France, for his part, would do everything possible to make them come true. The man said that he understood that Sam and Linda were really taking a risk. As he approached his desk, he suddenly stopped. France said that if many people had not died when he suggested going to the port, he would not have asked them to do so now. Alexander reacted to his provocation, saying that the blame for that incident lay with him, because it was he who lost a dozen people entrusted to him. The director replied that it was not his fault. It was a collective decision to go to the port. Sitting, Sam and Linda listened attentively to the conversation and tried to understand what trap they wanted to lure them into. Sam understood perfectly well that the port, infested with monsters, was the only link connecting their island with the outside world. Knowing this, it is not difficult to guess that they were locked on this island. The hero decided to fit into the conversation, saying that instead of wandering aimlessly around the island, it was best to stay and look at the situation. The director replied that he was willing to stay and do his best, but if anything went beyond his capabilities, they would face problems. Sam said that he could linger, after which the man would decide whether he needed the guy's help or not. France thanked him for his understanding and asked the teacher to show the guests their rooms. After that, Sam and Linda got up from their seats and headed towards the exit. The director was glad that everything went according to his plan. A few moments later, Derek entered the office. He wasn't sure if it was necessary to deal with them this way when Sam and that girl simply had mediocre abilities. The man just patted his nephew on the shoulder. Approaching the window, he said that when he gains absolute power, the image will no longer have any meaning. France was sure that the winged wolf would wake up soon. All they had to do was hide as many people here as possible. He firmly believed that the winged wolf would definitely fall into his trap with humans as bait. The next day, Alexander gave instructions to the students who would go with him on reconnaissance. Sam approached the teacher and asked if he needed help with something. Alexander asked them to bring gasoline nearby. He said that there were no werewolves in that place lately. When Melissa approached him, the teacher asked if something had happened. She replied that several patients had just arrived, but they did not have some medicines and asked if he could bring them. Alexander replied that most of the medicines in the areas where they go usually have already run out. For this, they will have to go to a new place. Sam suddenly intervened and asked that the task be left to him because he knew where to get many of the drugs. Alexander doubted and asked about the guy's condition. The hero replied that he was already completely fine. Exhaling heavily, the teacher agreed and asked the guy to be as careful as possible on this task. Melissa asked him to come with her so that she could give him a list of necessary medications. Sam and Linda silently followed the girl. The guy decided to talk to her when her other, more talkative personality awakens. Suddenly, Melissa stopped and asked what decision the guy made regarding their conversation yesterday. Sam looked at the girl with confusion. Smiling, she touched his chin and asked if, even with his abilities, he could not recognize her. Linda used her ice breath on the guy, saying that now was not the time for flirting. A few moments later, Sam hesitantly asked if Melissa really believed he had the strength to protect her. The girl replied that with his current abilities he would not be able to do this, but she knew a short way to become stronger. Smiling, she made him another tempting condition. By accepting her offer, Sam will be able to quickly improve his skills and make out with two beautiful girls at once. The guy gave in under her pressure and accepted the offer. As a reward for Sam accepting her offer, Melissa decided to share some important news with them. She said that the number of werewolves on the island had increased significantly. The girl was sure that with their current strength, Sam and Linda should not have any problems with a small crowd of low-level monsters. But if a guy meets a high-level werewolf with abilities, then it's better for him to avoid combat. Melissa had no idea how exactly they managed to defeat one such werewolf, but Sam must be aware of his difference in strength with such opponents. She reminded him that even if he defeated such a monster again, his soul would continue to fight and try to take over Sam's body. The girl said that if Linda had not helped him last time, the guy would have already been under the control of the soul of the monster he killed and would have lost his own. Sam remembered exactly how Linda had helped him. Now he understood why at that moment the girl was the first to take the initiative. Now Melissa set them a task, which was to kill as many low-level werewolves as possible and increase their strength by absorbing their souls. The hero objected, remembering that all these werewolves used to be people. Melissa said that werewolves complete the chain of evolution by hunting people or capturing souls. That's why if they are attacked, Sam shouldn't feel sorry just because werewolves were once human. The girl said that if he doesn't kill, then they will kill him. Then she pointed her finger at the area of his heart. Sam wondered if there was a way to turn them back into people, similar to what happened with Linda. Melissa replied that even she did not know this. She explained that because she received too much information that day, she had forgotten a lot and needed to recover the lost fragments of her memories. Sam asked if Linda could also use it to restore her memory. Melissa replied that she couldn't help with that, but she was sure that one day Linda's memory would fully return. Approaching the guy, Melissa whispered in his ear what he was going to do if Linda's memory returned and she killed monsters that were people. Looking at the dumbfounded guy, the girl said that most monsters still like to kill people. After she was surrounded by a strange light, a lot of different information began to fill her head. Her mind and body also began to change. She admitted that this information completely rewrote her thoughts and consciousness. If someone else's soul were to inhabit her, she would also turn into a monster, like the werewolves outside. As for Linda's condition, the girl suggested that most likely something went wrong during the transfer of information, and serious gaps appeared in her memory. Turning around, Melissa said that the moment her memory returns, it will be unknown whether she will become a monster who must be killed or Linda. Although Sam hated to think about it, he knew perfectly well that Melissa was right. The guy patted Linda on the head, telling her not to worry about it. He was determined that even if her memory returned and Linda turned into a monster, he would be by her side and they would leave this world together. Sometime later, they moved into the city, looking for the right pharmacy. As expected, Sam found all the indicated drugs in the pharmacy he had chosen, and having collected everything he needed, he shouted to Linda that it was time for them to return. Suddenly, on the shelf next to him, the guy noticed something that caught his attention. Melissa's request to also bring contraceptives came to mind. He doubted whether they really needed to be taken. The inner angel and demon argued among themselves, weighing the pros and cons. Sam himself at that moment covered his eyes with his hand and froze in indecision with his hand outstretched to the shelf. Noticing the guy's strange pose, Linda took one of the boxes of contraceptives and asked if Sam needed it. The guy came to his senses and replied that there was no need and asked her to put the box back. The girl looked with interest at what she was holding in her hands and asked what it was used for. The guy didn't know how to explain this to her and smiled awkwardly, scratching the back of his head. Then he switched to another topic, saying that there was a store nearby and said that he would go there to see if he could come across something useful. The girl watched the retreating guy. A moment later, without him noticing, she put a box of contraceptives in the pocket of her dress. It only took them a couple of minutes to get to the store the guy was talking about earlier. He suggested splitting up and looking for useful things here. Turning around, Sam noticed that the girl was tense and was constantly looking out the store window. When he asked what happened, Linda pointed her finger somewhere on the street. She said there was a werewolf there that they could kill. Suddenly, Sam covered her mouth with his hand. The guy noticed the approach of several monsters and hid with Linda behind the wall of the store. He was lucky, and a couple of seconds later, the werewolves headed in a different direction, passing by their shop. Only then was he able to breathe out a sigh of relief and relax a little. The disgruntled girl asked why they couldn't just kill them. Sam replied that after all, they were once human too, and he wanted to avoid unnecessary deaths. Linda interrupted, reminding him that killing werewolves would help him become stronger, and Linda wanted Sam to live more than anyone. The guy realized that the girl was very worried about him. He hugged her, saying that he was not going to pose as a saint to the core, and if he had to kill a werewolf, then he would do it to protect the people close to him. The guy asked that the girl also not take the first initiative in killing monsters, only when they are pressed against the wall. A sudden cry for help brought the couple back to reality. Sam and Linda ran outside and saw two werewolves chasing a little boy. One of the monsters caught up with the child and attacked. The hero watched this picture with horror. The child flew several meters, hitting his back against a flimsy structure with many boxes. A moment later, the boy found himself buried under the contents of numerous boxes that collapsed on top of him. The werewolves sensed the newly arrived prey and turned around. Sam and Linda stood a couple of meters from the monsters. The hero was filled with anger. The next moment, he rushed towards the werewolves, leaving electric discharges behind him. The monster that was closest to the guy did nothing and waited for the right moment to counterattack. When Sam approached him at a sufficient distance, the werewolf punched with all his might, but the hero managed to dodge and the enemy's fist pierced the tile. Moving behind him, the guy grabbed the werewolf by the tail. He pulled his enemy's tail with all his might, hoping that he would lose his balance and fall. A couple of moments later, that's exactly what happened. Sam knocked the werewolf onto his back. The monster growled from powerlessness, but the strong current discharge that ran through his entire body prevented him from making even the slightest movement. The next moment, Sam stepped on the head of the enemy he had defeated. After that, the guy took off again and ran to the second monster. Finding himself 2 steps away from his enemy, Sam activated the lightning in his palms. After that, he touched his hand to the monster's head, sending a strong electric discharge. A moment later, the werewolf fell to the ground. Thus, Sam dealt with 2 werewolves for literally a minute. Sitting down by the boxes that covered the little boy's body, Sam felt guilty that he had not dealt with these monsters earlier. An innocent child had suffered. Suddenly, he noticed how the fingers of the boy, whom he had taken for dead, trembled. The guy began to disassemble the boxes, hoping that he would be able to save him. A couple of moments later, the hero dug the boy out from under the rubble and asked how he was feeling. The boy didn't answer, only let out a painful groan when Sam picked him up. Linda hurried to use ice to temporarily numb the wound on his back. Feeling a little relieved, the boy began to call his mother and sister. Sam rose to his feet and said he would take him to safety. The child grabbed the guy's jacket and said that he was fine, but his mother and sister had not eaten for several days and he had to bring them some food. He asked Sam to help them, saying that they were in a nearby building. Feeling that the child's back was bleeding again, Sam sighed heavily and agreed to help. All the way to the child's house, the guy tried to prevent him from losing consciousness by talking to him. He asked what the boy's name was, but he replied that everyone usually calls him Baby. Sam said it was a rather strange name. The boy explained that his mother could not call him by his full name, then more often she simply called him Malyesh. Then the guy asked why he went alone in search of food and where his father was. The kid replied that, according to his mother, his father had gone to fight monsters and would return when he was finished with everyone. When they got to the right house, the boy said that they had arrived and his mother and sister were on the 3rd floor. A few minutes later, the 3 of them went upstairs. Entering the apartment, the kid pointed Sam to the slightly open door, saying that his relatives were in that room. Linda immediately noticed the terrible smell that filled the house. Sam put the boy on the couch and told him to rest here while he gave the food to his mom and sister. Approaching the room indicated earlier, the guy asked if there was anyone there, but there was no answer. When he opened the door, horror showed on his face. Linda came up and covered her mouth with her hand to keep from screaming. Looking at how Sam began to take apart the bag of food, the girl said that the woman and child were already dead. But despite this, the guy replied that they had brought a lot of supplies for them and sat down next to the woman. He said that now they don't have to worry and can finally enjoy their food. Putting the last packet of cookies on the bedside table, Sam said that they would never go hungry again. As he spoke these words, tears flowed from his eyes. They left that room only after several long minutes, returning to the living room. The kid asked how his mother and sister were doing. Trying to keep the sadness out of his voice, Sam replied that they were fine. Sitting down on the floor opposite the boy, the guy began to open the remaining provisions and said that his sister ate and immediately fell asleep, so there was no point in disturbing them yet. The kid's sudden question about whether his sister was cute took Sam by surprise. Smiling sadly, the guy replied that she was the sweetest girl he had ever seen. Sam then helped the boy into a sitting position, telling him that he needed to get well soon to protect them. Our hero handed the kid a spoon with canned meat, saying that he needed to eat. Suddenly, the boy began to have a severe cough. As soon as this attack stopped, he replied that he would not eat because it was too difficult to find food now, and he needed to save money. Sighing, Sam replied that the kid could eat in peace because he still had a lot of food left. Suddenly, the boy asked if he could ask Sam a question, who nodded approvingly in response. He asked the guy to leave this food for his mother and sister. With tears in his eyes, the kid said that this was how they could hold out until his father returned. Sam replied that he would leave them all the food he had so the boy could eat in peace, because he also needed strength to wait for his father to return. Closing his eyes, the kid said that it would be great if he met Sam a little earlier, then they wouldn't have to starve. After this, the boy lost consciousness and began to fall. Sam threw the can of canned food onto the floor. He managed to catch the boy in time. The guy was trying to wake him up so that he could get up and eat. But a few moments later, when the kid's chest stopped rising, Sam realized what had happened. This child died in his arms. At this moment, many new wounds appeared on his heart, and he screamed from the pain piercing his heart. Linda sank to the floor next to him and wanted to touch the guy's shoulder to comfort him, but suddenly Sam started punching the floor as hard as he could, shouting that it was all his fault. A few seconds later, the guy stopped torturing the floor, because the pain from his broken knuckles could not be compared with the pain in his heart. With tears in his eyes, he said that if it weren't for his naivety and kindness, this child would not have been attacked by werewolves. If only he had listened to the distress signal a little earlier, because their house was so close to the store, all of this could have been avoided. The guy blamed himself for being selfish, and he should have taken the initiative to search and rescue survivors much earlier. Sam understood that the deaths of the kid's family members and himself rested on his shoulders. Linda hugged the guy, asking him to stop thinking about it. But Sam couldn't help but think about it, because they shouldn't have died. This shouldn't have happened. Linda sat in this position for a long time, consoling Sam, whose heart that day was covered with deep wounds that would never heal. A few hours later, the hero covered the dead bodies with a sheet. He sincerely hoped that in another world they would be happy and would never again know what hunger was. A drawing lying on the nightstand caught Sam's attention. He picked up a piece of paper that showed the kid and his family. Looking at this drawing, Sam remembered that the boy believed until the very end that his father would one day return. The guy promised that he would definitely find his father, no matter what the cost. After which he took a frame with a photograph of a father holding his son in his arms. Sam hoped that this man would be exactly as the kid had described him. If this man simply left his family and ran away, then he will find him and kill him. At the same time, active operations took place on one of the captured military personnel. People managed to lure several high-level monsters with abilities into traps and put them in cages. France extended his hand and stroked the captured monster, saying that very soon he would be generously fed. At the same moment, a subordinate approached him and said that everything was ready for dispatch. France said that they should not hesitate, since with the help of high-level werewolves, they will be able to get rid of the police. Derek didn't understand why his uncle didn't let people with abilities sort things out. The man replied that it was enough to simply destroy the werewolves, so these people should not be shown to the world yet. Then he looked at the group of people wrapped in black cloaks, saying that these were his trump cards. At the same time, Sam and Linda came across a destroyed police station. After looking around, the guy came to the conclusion that there had been a fierce battle here, and most likely no one had survived. Also, looking at the signs of the battle, it seemed to Sam that the werewolves organized an attack. He did not understand why so many werewolves attacked a small police station. Suddenly, they heard shots somewhere nearby. Several werewolves rushed at their victims, deftly avoiding the bullets. Michael shouted to his subordinates to save their ammunition and shoot only at the heads and knees. Sam watched these people from the side. He noticed that they were simply dressed, cooperated with each other, and skillfully used weapons. Suddenly, Linda called out to him and pointed somewhere to the side. A few meters away, 2 more people were fighting a crowd of monsters. The girl noticed that several werewolves had climbed onto the roof of the building and were about to attack from there. The hero ran towards the men, shouting that the enemy was going to attack from above, but they did not have time to do anything and froze, looking at the monsters flying at them. At that moment, he shouted at them to lie down on the ground. After this, Linda created many ice needles and sent them all towards the enemy at high speed. The lying men heard several explosions. However, a couple of moments later, when the dust settled, the men saw that the monsters were still standing in front of them, but only pieces of ice were sticking out of their bodies. Without wasting time, Sam rushed towards the monsters with lightning bolts at the ready. He knocked the werewolves down with one blow, after which he raised his fist up and shouted that he would kill them all. Along with the guy's fist, several strong lightning bolts struck the monster. The men sitting nearby were amazed at what they saw. A couple of seconds later, Michael and his subordinates ran up to them, asking if everything was okay. The man reported that the werewolves ran away and they stopped firing. Noticing a guy standing nearby, Michael approached him and thanked him for his help. If it weren't for him, everyone here would have been dead. Afterwards, the man extended his hand, saying that although he did not know the name of their savior, he was very grateful. At that moment, Sam remembered a photo of the man holding the baby in his arms. Clenching his fist, he asked why, being so close to his home, the man did not come and save his child. Sam then attacked Michael, intending to hit him. The man allowed the guy to push him to the ground. As Michael's subordinates pointed their guns at Sam, ready to shoot at any moment, Linda covered the guy's back, aiming one ice needle at each. The man did not even think about somehow resisting the guy who attacked him. With his head down, he asked Sam how his family was doing. The guy was overwhelmed with rage. He asked why he himself could not go and check the condition of his family members. Sam said that his wife and children are no longer in this world. The man grabbed Sam's hand and thanked him for the information. After this, he ordered his subordinates to lower their weapons and said that they were returning. The marshal looked at his commander sadly. Sam was not happy with the man's reaction to his words and wanted to catch up with him. But his way was blocked by the marshal standing next to him, who said that there was no need to irritate Michael even more because he had already suffered enough. He said that his commander was completely different from the person Sam might have imagined him to be. Some things cannot be seen right away. Sometime later, the men took Sam and Linda to their hideout. Looking around, the guy asked why there were so many werewolf corpses here. The marshal replied that when the monster attacks became more frequent, their superiors asked them to return to headquarters and be ready. But when they arrived at the scene, the situation was already out of control. They gathered all the survivors and built a shelter in this tunnel. But the werewolves quickly found them, as if someone had reported this information. So there was a very fierce battle here. After their commander died, his deputy took command, but he also died, so they changed commanders over and over again. Suddenly there was an explosion that claimed many lives. Ultimately, Michael was the only one left who could take command. Once inside the tunnel, Marshall explained that it was not that Michael did not want to save his family. They were obliged to protect the people in the shelter, and they did not have the opportunity to take into account their marital status. The situation also worsened due to the fact that supplies and food became sharply scarce. Sam asked why they couldn't pick up the local people and leave. The marshal replied that Michael had already suggested something similar, but the question was who could guarantee that there was some safer place somewhere. That is why most people do not want to go out and take risks, and they also now have many wounded, which further aggravates the current situation. Sometime later, Sam decided to approach Michael, who was sitting at a distance. He handed the man a piece of paper, saying it was his son's drawing. The guy said that the boy believed until the very end that his father would defeat the werewolves and return for his family. Looking at the drawing of his already dead son, the man began to cry. Turning around, Sam said that he left the three of them in the room, and if Michael managed to return, the guy asked the man to give them a human burial. The man asked the guy if he still had the right to meet his family again. The guy asked, almost in a whisper, if he had the right to accuse Michael of anything. Suddenly, the man said that his son never liked being called baby. The guy turned around and looked at Michael with a silent question in his eyes. He admitted that he always wanted his son's life to be peaceful and carefree because he was a very smart and brave boy. Lowering his head, Sam apologized to the man for his behavior earlier. Suddenly, the guy's heart squeezed again, and he couldn't help but let out a painful groan, which made Michael and Linda worry. Sam was seated on boxes of provisions. The man excitedly asked how he was feeling. The guy replied that he was fine, just that today he had killed several monsters, which is why he had no strength left. The girl leaned in to kiss Sam, but the guy stopped her, saying that the situation was not so critical. Winding a lock of hair around her finger, Linda asked if he really didn't need her help. Michael, who was watching this scene, was convinced that today's youth had become too cheeky. Sam concluded that even if he absorbs the soul of a weak werewolf, his own body gets tired too quickly. He also noted that his strength, although not significantly, had increased. Looking at how the guy created lightning in his hand, Michael asked where they got this kind of ability. Sam replied that he himself did not fully understand everything, but after the appearance of werewolves, some people began to awaken various abilities in themselves. He said that in the shelter where he was previously, there were several other people with abilities. Michael looked at the guy in surprise when he learned that there were still people like him. The next moment, the man grabbed the guy by the shoulders and, not believing what he had heard earlier, asked if there were any other shelters on this island. Besides this, Sam replied that there was. He went outside to help find other survivors and medicine. Michael began asking the guy a lot of questions about where it was and how many people they had already managed to save. Sam said that initially, fleeing from monsters, their refuge was an international school in which there were about 100 survivors, most of whom were school children, and showed its location on the map. He explained that there were few werewolves in the area, so the danger level was lower. The marshal sighed with relief, saying that they now had somewhere to go. Michael said that this shelter is not a government shelter, so they may not agree to accept them. Sam replied that there was no need to worry about this, although the director of this school was too authoritarian, but he would not refuse to help a person who could fight. Looking to the side, Michael said that there are too many monsters here and they have a lot of wounded and ordinary civilians. Sam said that together with Linda, he would help ward off the monsters. The man's only choice was whether to persuade the others to take risks in order to transfer resources and go to a new shelter or not. The man asked how many monsters they could handle. Sam replied that he could easily deal with 20 werewolves, but this took into account the fact that they would only block the attacks of monsters. After listening to him, Marshall said that in this case, everything should work out for them, because there are only 30 werewolves outside at the moment. A group of guys approached them, and one of them shouted that he could cope with at least 100 of these monsters. He asked why Michael so easily believed the words of some strangers. The marshal approached him and asked what he was talking about. Alan believed that he said everything correctly because everyone could hear what was being discussed here earlier. Alan said that the commander needed to turn on his brain and think about the likelihood that this shelter was not imaginary and how the guy and he alone could contain 20 werewolves. If Sam is really as strong as he says, then the man said that he must first defeat Alan's comrades, whom he brought with him. Michael touched the guy's shoulder, saying that Sam needed to convince everyone that his words were not an empty phrase, and then they would follow him. Smiling, the guy asked the man if this was so. Michael told the guy to just fight as hard as he could and not hurt anyone. Walking forward, Sam promised that he would try to be careful and make his people believe in him. The hero slowly approached the crowd waiting for him. Linda walked next to him. Seeing that Sam was not in much of a hurry, the men began to shout out, teasing the hero that his girlfriend had more courage than the guy himself. When Linda stopped, barely able to contain her anger, Sam took her hand, telling her that he would figure everything out on his own. But the girl objected to him. She didn't like the fact that these people were rude to Sam right in the face and didn't care about him. They deserved to be taught a lesson by her. The guy patted her on the head, saying that he should do this himself. Then he took a few more steps forward and, pulling on his gloves, shouted for them all to attack at the same time. The men were disgusted by the guy's excessive self-confidence. Seeing the confusion on their faces, Sam explained that it was easier to finish them all off with one blow rather than fight each one individually. Alan shouted that the guy was just going crazy, after which he and his friends simultaneously rushed at Sam. While creating lightning, he said to never underestimate your opponent. After that, he touched his palms to the ground, conducting electrical discharges through the ground. All the men were paralyzed by powerful discharges that pierced their bodies. Sam yelled for them to get ready for their new fashionable hairstyles. After this, electrical discharges struck each of them in the head, causing their hair to stand on end. Approaching the defeated men, Sam appreciated his work and said that it looked pretty cool. He noticed that one of them was completely bald and apologized, saying that he had slightly miscalculated the voltage. The men admitted defeat, saying Sam was too strong. Even though the hero has proven his strength to everyone, some still have doubts about whether there really is another shelter, because if there is none, then leaving here will be simple suicide. After hearing these conversations, Michael approached Sam, saying that he believed this guy. After that, Marshall and several other guys supported Sam, saying that they also trusted him. An old man who came forward asked Michael whether it would be too irresponsible to rely on the unsubstantiated words of a stranger. The man replied that werewolf attacks are happening more and more often, which is why they have a lot of casualties and deaths. He said that even if that shelter did not exist, it still makes no sense for them to stay at one point and wait for the moment of their death. Michael's speech did not instill confidence in people. Many doubted and thought that it was a trap, but there were those who shared the view of the current situation with the commander, saying that sometimes the situation really needs to be changed. Suddenly they heard a noise outside. Michael radioed the patrol officers, asking what was going on. He was informed that a whole horde of werewolves attacked them at once. The defense line was broken through, and according to rough estimates, there were more than 100 monsters. Suddenly the connection was cut off. Hearing the terrible news, everyone rushed in different directions, hoping to hide from the impending threat. Michael ordered everyone to act according to the evacuation plan they had previously developed and protect the civilians at all costs. After this, the man turned to Sam, asking that they go with the others to the tunnel to help people move to another shelter. The guy doubtfully asked what would happen to the rest. Michael smiled and replied that sometimes sacrifices have to be made to keep people safe. Then he turned around, shouting at the end that they would try to buy as much time as possible to escape. Sam looked sadly at the retreating backs of the men who were running straight into the hands of death. Having arrived at the scene, the men began firing at the monsters. Michael supported everyone, reminding them that they had too much at stake. Suddenly, one of the monsters jumped high into the air, aiming for a man standing nearby. Michael noticed the approaching werewolf too late. The man had been ready for death for a long time and was glad that he could finally be reunited with his wife and children. But Sam had other thoughts on this matter. He plunged the knife into the chest of the monster, who did not have time to reach his victim. The guy said that he promised the kid to take his father away from here. Turning around, he said that the same applies to all other fearless warriors. The man smiled, saying that he sensed a fighting spirit in the guy. Sam replied that today his determination is stronger than ever. A few moments later, the hero again entered into battle with the monsters. He created an electric ball in his palm and threw it at his opponent. The werewolf was knocked down by this blow and flew several meters back. Sam could feel the power coursing through his veins. When several werewolves rushed at him at the same time, the guy took a defensive stance, gathering as much power as possible in his hands. The next moment he hit the ground and electric discharges struck the werewolves. Linda was at the top at this time, creating ice needles. When Sam carried out his attack, the girl realized that it was her turn. Many ice needles fell from the sky onto the monsters like hail. As Linda knelt down next to Sam, he praised her. Suddenly, he felt something strange. The guy saw clots of animal energy that were in the air. Suddenly, another werewolf appeared and rushed at Sam and Linda. The girl reacted faster than the guy and began creating an ice shield to protect Sam. But the barrier she created was broken by one blow from the werewolf, and Linda herself was thrown back. Michael was attracted by a noise from the side, and when he turned around to find out what was happening, he saw Sam and Linda lying on the ground next to the monster. He shouted to his subordinates to hurry to their aid. Michael and another man instantly found themselves near Sam and began shooting at the enemy. The excited hero asked if everything was okay with Linda. The girl answered with a nod of her head. Suddenly, his heart began to squeeze again, and again he let out a painful groan. Seeing Sam again in this state, Linda was scared. The hero thought that if every time he killed werewolves, their souls continued to be absorbed by him, then the negative effect would only grow, but he also could not be sure that Michael and his guys were unlikely to withstand so many monsters. Turning around, the man shouted for Sam to get out of here as quickly as possible. Rising from the ground, the guy replied that everything was fine with him, he just spent too much energy this time. Sam looked at the backs of these people who did not have any superpowers, but still fearlessly sacrificed their lives for the sake of others. He and Linda didn't want to become a burden to anyone simply because they weren't feeling well. The hero activated his ability again. He thought that since they are in a world in which the end of the world has come, they must face their death without fear and save those they can. A moment later, Sam rushed forward, engulfed in electricity. A few minutes later, the ground was littered with many monster corpses. All the wounded were provided with medical care. Those whose wounds were not so significant went back to base helping each other. Michael, who approached Sam and Linda, who were sitting, admitted that at first he was very worried about whether everything planned would go according to plan, or whether the guy would not have the strength to continue the battle. Afterwards, the man sat down next to the guy and, patting him on the shoulder, said that although Sam was still young, he was the most fearless among all those present. The guy exhaled tiredly and asked the man to stop mocking him because his hands were still shaking with fear. Michael replied that the guy shouldn't humiliate himself, and he did his best. At the same moment, Marshall approached them. Rising to his feet, Michael asked if the evacuation was successful. Having received a positive answer, he and the men standing nearby smiled joyfully. Afterwards, Michael extended his hand to Sam, saying that it was time for them to move out too. The hero took the offered hand and smiled. All this time, they were quietly watched through binoculars. France did not expect Sam to join a group of former military men and take their side. He lowered the binoculars and said that in this case, the guy should not blame him for the cruelty shown, because he himself chose his future fate. After this, France ordered the release of everyone they had locked in a nearby truck. When high-level monsters came out from there, the man gave them the order to destroy everyone in the enemy camp. A few moments later, several dozen werewolves rushed in the direction he indicated. Sam and Linda, accompanied by other military men, passed through the tunnel. Michael gave the order to plant explosives in order to subsequently blow up this place and prevent the monsters from using this passage. The man instructed the others to search for surviving comrades. Looking at him, Sam thought that if he really wanted to save as many people as possible, then he should follow his example. If he were in charge, he would not even think about covering the rear by destroying the tracks. A couple of moments later, one of the men shouted that he had found one survivor, but he was badly injured. Michael rushed to his aid. The man touched his commander's shoulder, saying that they shouldn't waste extra bandages because he wouldn't survive with such a wound. Michael interrupted the man, saying that he would definitely survive. Suddenly, he was contacted by radio and told that another horde of werewolves was already within a radius of 1 kilometer from them. He asked if they had time to plant the explosives. Michael was horrified when he was told that the detonator was nowhere to be found. Sam decided to intervene and said that he would block the passage and buy them some time. The man approached the guy, saying that he was too weak now and he didn't want to put his life at risk. Having contacted his subordinate by radio, Michael asked to provide him with the necessary materials for the explosion, and he ordered the rest to take people as far away from here as possible. Sam shouted that his strength had already been restored and he was ready to fight again, but Michael interrupted him, saying that he would not accept any objections. Suddenly, a wounded man intervened in their argument, saying that he would remain here in any case. Taking a grenade out of his pocket, he said that he still had one left in stock and that should be enough, so the man asked them to leave here together. Michael looked at his subordinate with horror, about to object. but the man got ahead of him, shouting that if they didn't leave, he would now blow everyone up with him. If they don't hurry up, the werewolves are about to come running here. Michael clenched his teeth in frustration. He had nothing to object to. With tears in his eyes, he saluted the brave warrior. Then he turned around, telling Sam that they should hurry up. Kevin asked the guy to make sure all the civilians got to the new location safely. He didn't want his sacrifice to be in vain. Closing his eyes, Sam promised that he would definitely see to it. The death of this warrior would be a huge feat, and he would not allow it all to be in vain. Hearing Sam's words, Kevin smiled. The monsters were already approaching them. When the werewolves got close enough, Kevin said that it was time for everyone to go to hell together. After that, he pulled out the pin with his teeth. The next moment, there was a strong explosion. Sam, Linda, and Michael managed to safely reach the members of their group ahead. Michael and Sam couldn't share the joy of their appearance. They turned around, looking sadly at the collapsed passage. A couple of moments later, Michael addressed the marshal, saying that they would stop for a break of 15 minutes. Afterwards, the man looked around, briefly examining everyone they managed to save. Sam approached him and said that they would have to go more than one day to the shelter and asked if the man had a travel plan. He replied that it was not safe to move at night, so he intended to find accommodation for the night in a neighboring area. Sadly, looking down at the floor, the man said that there should be no problems, because he knew this district like the back of his hand. Sam tapped Michael on the shoulder and said that he would be able to visit his wife and children along the way. Suddenly, a werewolf roar was heard, attracting everyone's attention. Everyone looked towards the tunnel, and from the settling clouds of dust, they saw a huge silhouette of a monster. Michael approached his subordinates, telling them to be ready. In the darkness of the tunnel, the monster's eyes flashed dangerously with red light. The next moment, he let out an even more terrifying roar. Michael and the others began firing at the werewolf. Sam and Linda realized that there was an enhanced monster in front of them. Activating his abilities, the guy rushed forward, shouting to the military to move back. They were no match for a monster of this level. But it was too late. The werewolf had already attacked them. He grabbed a nearby car and intended to throw it at the military. The men lying on the floor watched this in horror. Suddenly, Sam appeared in front of them, yelling for them to run away. He tried to hold back the monster's pressure. But a couple of moments later, the guy was thrown aside. Sam didn't expect there to be such a big difference in strength between them. He told Michael that now they need to take away ordinary people, and they can leave this monster to him and Linda. But the man objected, saying that this werewolf is many times stronger than the previous ones, and they cannot cope alone. Sam said that although werewolves are strong, they are not particularly smart. He was confident that Michael alone should be in charge of the escape operation, so even if they didn't defeat the monster, it would be much easier to escape knowing that everyone else was safe. The man did not know how to object to Sam and, smiling, wished them good luck. For an inexplicable reason, he believed that this guy would succeed. After this, Sam turned to Linda, saying that they would proceed according to the old plan. The next moment, they rushed towards the werewolf. The monster covered himself from the ice needles fired at him by the girl. At the same moment, Sam decided to attack the werewolf. The guy raised his fist to strike. The enemy followed his example and also raised his clawed paw. However, instead of striking, Sam grabbed the monster by the outstretched paw. Then, pushing off from her, he did a somersault in the air. The monster raised its other paw to strike while the guy had his back to him. At the same moment, Linda used ice. Sam jumped again, raising his fist to strike again. The next moment, Sam struck the monster with a strong blow. This action of the guy infuriated the werewolf. The hero jumped to the side, shouting Linda's name. The girl had already accumulated a sufficient amount of energy and was ready to attack. A moment later, tall ice blocks appeared one after another, surrounding the monster's body. Sam attacked the werewolf again. But the monster was not going to lose to his victim so easily. A strong electrical discharge erupted from his body, harming Linda and Sam. They landed a few steps away from the enemy. A man watching this fight from the shadows said that if it were an ordinary high-level werewolf, they would not have had any difficulty in dealing with him. Thanks to France's special skill, which is to control the minds of living beings, this monster has become much stronger. The man was sure that Sam and Linda would die right here because the monstrous strength of the werewolf, combined with France's intelligence, was an invincible weapon. Sam managed to dodge the werewolf's furious attack. However, in the next moment, several high-voltage discharges hit his body. Immediately after this, the monster picked up several stones from the ground and threw them at Sam. The guy managed to dodge several, but in some places he was caught. Sam didn't understand what was happening. This werewolf fights completely differently than others. A moment later, the guy flew into the boxes of provisions. Linda noticed that Sam was unable to cope with this monster. The girl created many ice needles in the blink of an eye. When the ice needles reached the monster, he activated his ability, and many electrical discharges surrounded his body, breaking up the flying needles. But the girl turned out to be stronger. The reduced needles managed to break through the defense, and a few moments later the monster fell to the ground. The werewolf did not receive mortal wounds, and bending down he quickly ran towards her, avoiding the needles. When he finally got close enough to her, he raised one paw to strike. Linda froze in fear. Suddenly, a car door flew into the werewolf's back. Sam ran towards the monster screaming. He managed to strike the werewolf, causing him to fly back. After this, the guy asked Linda to distract the werewolf with ice needles. Having said this, Sam immediately rushed at the monster to attack him again, and the girl without delay fulfilled the request, creating ice needles. The werewolf covered his face so that the ice needles would not hit him. Just as Sam was about to hit him, the werewolf jumped back, but the guy followed him, not abandoning his attempts to strike the werewolf. However, the monster avoided his attack again. The werewolf jumped back a few meters. These stupid attacks of the guy began to irritate him. The next moment, the monster let out another roar. Sam felt electricity run through his body. The werewolf copied Sam's style and slammed both hands on the ground, and powerful electrical discharges hit everything within a radius of several meters. Linda also felt strong currents running through her body. Sam didn't notice how the werewolf approached him from behind. The next moment, the monster attacked the guy. He flew into the wall, hitting his back painfully. Sam saw the monster form an electric ball in its hand and was about to throw it at the guy. Smiling, he thought that his end would come here too. Suddenly, Linda appeared in front of the guy, taking the blow. Sam managed to land back on the ground with the girl in his arms. Looking at the girl's back, he saw a deep mark from the monster's claws. He looked at the girl's pale face and asked how she was feeling. The girl did not answer, but only extended her hand to Sam's face. But the next second, her hand fell limply to the floor. At that moment, Sam's heart skipped a beat. He squeezed the girl tighter in his arms, asking her to open her eyes. But despite all his pleas, the girl's eyes still remained closed. The werewolf stood watching the guy all this time. Suddenly, France felt strange vibrations of energy. Approaching Sam, the man realized that they were coming from him. He decided not to miss the opportunity and finally get rid of the guy who could cause him a lot of problems in the future. At the same moment, Michael appeared on the truck along with the marshal, took a weapon. The man climbed out of the window and began shooting at the monster, not understanding why Sam was not doing anything. Michael hit the werewolf's legs, weakening him for a few moments. After that, he got out of the truck and shouted for Sam to get inside as quickly as possible. He noticed that many electrical discharges were running through the guy's body. Putting the girl on the ground, Sam said that they needed to leave here because he was no longer able to control himself. Michael didn't have a good feeling. Sam shouted for the man to run away from here, after which he was overwhelmed by power, taking control of the guy's consciousness. At the same moment, the monster jumped onto the truck, after which he rushed at Sam, not paying any attention to Michael. The guy managed to inflict a strong blow on the werewolf in the stomach. Because of this, the monster flew several meters back. Sam continued to stand in place, watching as the massive body of the monster fell to the ground. France couldn't understand where the guy got so much strength. The next moment, Sam also roared, causing powerful discharges of electricity, just like the monster a few minutes ago. This picture sparked excitement in France's blood. The monster rushed at the guy, but he did not let the werewolf get closer, attacking the enemy with an electric shock. After this growl, Sam rushed forward. The monster moved away from the blow and also rushed at the guy, raising its clawed paw to attack. But Sam grabbed his paw, passing electricity through it through the enemy's body. The next moment, Sam staggered away from the monster, holding the werewolf's severed arm in his hand. The guy increased the voltage, and the limb he was holding broke into several parts. At the same moment, the monster attacked the guy, releasing a strong charge of electricity, but Sam managed to dodge it by jumping up. Then he counterattacked the werewolf, slamming him into the ground. The pain received by the monster was also transmitted to France, who controlled the werewolf. The man didn't expect this guy to be so strong. He developed a desire to possess this guy's power. Having dealt with the monster, Sam went up to Michael to check if everything was okay with him. Not noticing any injuries on the man's body, the guy moved on, ignoring all the questions addressed to him. He walked up to the girl lying on the ground and took her in his arms. When Sam noticed that she was no longer breathing, many lightning bolts randomly began to strike the ground around the guy, after which he lost consciousness. Melissa also noticed this phenomenon. She realized that Sam was faced with problems. Sometime later, Sam regained consciousness and saw a girl hovering over him. She admitted that she did not expect that the guy would be able to wake up after defeating a high-level monster. The position they were in confused the guy, and he tried to move away from the girl. But she told him not to move. Although he managed to maintain his sanity, his soul was greatly weakened. After touching her forehead with the guy, she said that she would show him a way to improve the soul of the beast. The girl sincerely did not understand why Linda was attracted to this guy. She said that if Linda was going to make a death contract with him, she would not stop her from doing it. Sam asked what happened to Linda. The girl replied that she was fine and his friend took her to a safe place. Having received an answer from her, the guy asked who the girl in front of him was. Tucking a stray strand behind her ear, she replied that so much time had passed that she herself had forgotten who she was. Approaching his face, the girl whispered that she only remembers that after the great battle between people and demons, she left her physical shell and fell into a deep sleep, becoming one with her blood descendants. She explained that descendants are so-called guides for people like her. The main purpose of the existence of her and creatures like her is to tell what really happened so that people can understand how to resist it. Sam was surprised when he heard that the girl had something to do with the great war between demons and humans. She decided that to make it clearer to him, she should start her story from the moment when God came down to this earth. The girl said that at the cost of his own life, God created everything that exists on this earth, and relying on the laws he left behind, living organisms began to multiply. At that time, there were no races or classes. This was so until the devil, who is the enemy of God, entered this pure and undefiled land. He was afraid of being destroyed by the new gods that might appear. Therefore, the devil began to enchant people. Thus his followers began to appear, called the demon race. For a long time, the two races were at enmity with each other, until a special person appeared. Abel wanted to put an end to this never-ending feud and challenged the demons. He led humanity and eradicated the entire race of demons on this earth. However, the devil managed to make his move, placing a demonic principle in the hearts of all living things, so even though the demons disappeared, conflicts between people did not stop. Every time conflicts reached their peak, new demons were born. When something like this happens, all living things mutate under the influence of the devil's power. Sam wondered who the devil really was. The girl touched the guy's chest, saying that he does not have a physical shell, he lives in the hearts of people. She said that those killed monsters were demons. People consumed by greed also become demons. If Sam had not withstood the temptation of the bestial soul, he would also have become one of them. Confused by her touch, the guy asked if there was any way to resist the demons. Smiling, she replied that everything was not as hopeless as it seemed at first glance. She explained that because the demons were created by the devil, they need a leader who was overthrown a long time ago. They will fight each other desperately until they choose a new demon king to lead them. If a person appears who is capable of killing the new demon king, then the evil essence in the souls of all living things will dissipate without a trace. From her words, the guy realized that until this time, people and demons were in the same boat. The girl confirmed his guess. A demon does not have to be evil, just as a person does not have to be kind. After that, her fingers closed around the guy's neck. Smiling insidiously, she said that even though she looked like a guide, she did not necessarily need to be as kind as they were.